Welcome, guys. Once again, we are back and we have Babe with us. Babe, you haven't been on in what? It's been 4, 5 months or something like that, I think,
Yeah,
since
yeah,
you've been
it's been
on.
a while.
Something like is 2020
Yep.
is last year. So it's good to
Thank
have
you.
you back. Um, we have not forgotten about you. You've been around, you've been hopping in the lives and stuff along those lines. But you've been working diligently on our next talking point. But before we get to that, what's new in your world?
You always put me in in the spotlight on the spot. Um, I just I think we were
I
talking
mean, we
earlier.
were talking beforehand, obviously, but yeah,
Yeah, that's my daughter's going to be getting
but
married.
yeah, go ahead and
She's going to be getting married this year. Yep,
yeah, that's I think the big
yep.
one.
Big one in a lot of ways, money and everything.
So that's cool. Yeah, no joke. Um, any diving trips planned?
Plans. So right now, yes, my dive buddy and we are tentatively planning to go to Bonterre Mines this year, which is going
Yeah,
to take a dry suit. It's going to be cold.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know my own, so
I
I'd have
remember.
to
I
come up
remember
with one.
growing up.
Growing up,
Yeah, I remember growing up. That was one of the places. Living in Illinois, looking at that, and it's like one of the places you can dive, and that's always one that came up as one of the top places to dive. And it's like, I mean, that's too cold. I don't want to start my diving career off in doing that. So I was like, yeah, no.
yep, understood.
Yeah. My mines are always cold anyway, and then you think about the water in there. Is like, yeah, that doesn't. I think it would have ruined the whole diving experience had I started off trying to dive that type of water.
Yeah, that's I know what you mean. Um, Growing up where I did, we're in the lakes, but only in the summertime. So, but I think that's where I become accustomed to a lot of cooler waters too. So cold water until I've gotten older, it bothers me more, but it usually didn't bother me.
Right. Yeah. I still don't like it. I, my sister and me were talking the other day about the how much we love to swim and stuff along those lines. But the problem is that the clinging wet clothes when you get out type of thing. It's one of those things where it almost to the point where I don't want to get into water because I know I have to deal with getting out of the water type of thing. So this is one, if I could just stay in the water and never get out, that'd be
Yeah,
fine. But um,
well, you know,
it's not
I know
possible.
it's not.
That's not possible. So
I know it's not our topic, but um, the new types of dive skins and stuff that have been coming out. Uh, they're amazing. So they're so much warmer because the technology they've used for the materials. They're so much warmer, and they wick water better,
yeah.
and but still keep you warm. So it's
Mm-hmm.
that's a thing that can help.
Interesting. Very cool. Well, what we're here today to talk about is you've done what you've done so far. You've done the Cousteau Con Shelf. You've done
Yep,
Tektite, I
yep.
think it was, um, and then we're going to tackle today. We're going to tackle Sealab, and there's several of those to go over. So this could be a lengthy one, but that's okay. It's all good stuff, and it's continuing this series of research you've been putting into these different underwater habitats. So without further ado, I'll just let you run with it, and then we'll hop in here as need be and address questions and whatever. But yeah, take it away.
Okay. So first, I'll say with Sealabs, there was three of them, and when you first look at it, especially you just look at it online, you're just scratching the surface. It's amazing what all went on, and I think you and I talked before about putting links up to the books and videos and stuff available. Um, so we'll have those here. Plus, there's a Man in the Sea Museum, and that has information there. And I know that one is there. The actual Sealab one is there. Um, it's if you're at all interested in this kind of stuff, get those books, watch those videos. When it all gets put together, it's not some little story we can do here on this. It is huge. It is amazing. So the Navy put these things on, okay, and when they did, the first Sealab one shoestring budget. I don't remember the numbers now. They're in that book. but shoestring budget. And a man named George Bond, he fronted his own money plus some others, but it was mainly him to do the research. And what they researched and mostly was gases, to mix your gases to stay underwater, to saturate, to be a saturation diver, to live and work under the water. So that was the biggest focus at first. So George Bond, they called him Papa Topside. Um, Later, he was actually in the first Sealab, but he pushed this stuff and he pushed it. And their idea was for, I told you, the knowledge to be gained, and it's used clear today with saturation diving and the Navy tables. This is one of the places where a lot of testing was done on those tables for your dive tables is what I'm talking about, your hyperbaric and saturation diving tables. Um, so I'm going to talk about Sealab I, and I already started talking about just shoestring budget. This thing was put together from floats. They cut some big floats and made a Sealab out of it. It was 40 foot by 9 foot, 40 foot long, 9 foot wide. And they crammed 4 guys in here. It was supposed to be 30 some days, I believe, and it ended up being 11 days long expedition because of a storm moving in. But let's back up before it was dropped in the water. So they're figuring out where to put this thing after the Navy okayed it. And George Bond and his people that had been doing these experiments on land with goats, monkeys, anything, just about any animal he thought that would produce a usable information that he could get a hold of. He had set up someplace there on base, and they were taking care of these animals. And that was actually some of the people that was working with him. That was actually like one of their jobs, the goat keeper. They would walk the goat because they'd have a pin for it, so they would walk it. They would walk it around base. um, um, there is a testing facility. It's a tower for diving, and the Navy used it for doing diving tests, and also submariners. They had to pass tests in their water training, and they would do that in this big tank. And so that was the base that he was doing this stuff off of. So you'd recognize, or anyone who's in this business or is interested in this stuff would recognize most of the names on these lists. But like Bob Barth, I mean, everyone knows the name Bob Barth. But Sealab I started out, and it's almost funny, anyways, because where they were putting it was Argus Island, and Argus Island did acoustic research for the Navy. And the way they did a lot of this acoustic research was they had rifle-fired grenades. So it was a grenade they'd fire off the end of a rifle, and out into the water it would explode for acoustic testing. Well, where they decided to put the first Sealab, they knew there was all kinds of unexploded grenades down on the seabed that didn't explode. So they had to get teams of people together, and they ended up getting Air Force divers, Navy divers, civilian divers, and just anyone enlisted divers that would volunteer and come and help. And they just pulled in a bunch of people, told them how to deal with what to do, and they combed the area, picking up all these unexploded grenades before they can even put Sealab there. So, I mean, to me, that's a funny start to do something, just because the idea of it, you're looking for a bunch of exploded grenades, hoping you don't miss one, for your habitat, you're sinking down there. But the duration was 11 days. It was to prove saturation diving as a possibility for working underwater. So after George Bond had provided all this research, got all this stuff done. That was his goal, to test these gases. And Scott Carpenter was supposed to be one of the 4 people that went in this. So it's the astronaut, Scott Carpenter. Um, and so what's funny about Scott Carpenter is he tried to get onto Jacques Cousteau's team. And Cousteau asked him, he said, well, why don't you just ask your own Navy and go live underwater with those guys? Scott Carpenter had no idea that these guys were doing this. He hadn't heard anything about it. And he was like, what? So that's what he did. He went and hit these guys up. And not long before they were getting ready to sink the first one, he was in either one place said a motorcycle, the other place said a scooter. Either way, some little 2-wheel thing. He got into a wreck and got broke an arm or something, and was unable to participate in that habitat as part of that crew. You will see him later, but that'd be so disappointing to be that close. But that's the other thing I've referred to the book. I have to say it. If you're at all interested in stuff, get it. It ties all this stuff together with a worldview. So everything's going on with Jacques Cousteau and others with the same thing, with the same ideas and stuff going on. It puts it all together. I was astounded. I really was. The 4 people that crewed Sealab I were Lester Anderson. Well, it is Bob Barth. Yep, Bob Barth, Sanders Manning, and Bob Thompson. And George Bond was like the head guy of it. I guess you'd say Captain Bond is who he was. Not 007, just Captain Bond, George Bond. What's weird is until I looked into Sealab, I'd heard the name but had no clue who he was. He had started out as a country doctor and got into, to make it short, got into the Navy and saw a need and an interest there for working underwater stuff and went after it. And like leaps and bounds of stuff for living underwater came from him. So that's pretty amazing. Sealab I was July 20, 1964. That's when they sunk it. So that would have been the start of everything for them, for their missions. Nothing outstanding, except that it was a shoestring budget. It used railroad train axles as ballast to sink it. I mean, they did everything they could to save budget to make this work, and they did, which was pretty cool. Did I already say how deep it was sank? It was only Sealab I was 58 meters, so 192 feet seawater. Now, go back to Cousteau's conch shelf, and that's a big difference.
That's pretty deep to be going for your first outing.
Yeah. But they had already been putting all this stuff together, and they knew. So I brought up that little the training tower for the divers and stuff earlier.
True.
And the book really brought it in. Is every one of these Sealab missions, the divers that were going to be there were training saturation diving in that place long before they ever even went there to the habitat. They kept training and training and training. They wanted it to be old hat when they got down there, just to take off like normal.
Sure.
So that's what they were doing, and it worked out for them. They proved what they needed to prove. So 11 days out of the 3 weeks or so that the first one was supposed to be, because of the storm. And I know I told you already, but the whole idea of getting a bunch of volunteer teams together to remove grenades so you can sink one, it's hilarious.
Well, that's like with where La Chalupa was over there in Puerto Rico. Um, I know there's a bunch of sea mines and stuff out there that I don't know if it was an issue in the 60s or not, or 70s. Um, but I know it's an issue today. And I believe it was because I was talking to somebody there in Puerto Rico a couple of years ago, and they're like, say it's still an issue to this day where if you're trying to do anything out there in certain areas of the water, you have to contend with these sea mines that are just below the surface out there that
Holy cow.
are a concern. So yeah, they haven't found them all, or they haven't done anything with them for whatever reason. So yeah, the ocean is a weird place.
Yes, it is. It was weird before people started tampering with it. Now it's even weirder.
That's true. Yep. One thing I will say, I'll hop in here. One thing I found was interesting was Scott Carpenter. The fact that he didn't know that the U.S. even had a program.
Yeah.
Goes to something we talk about every once in a while is the fact that people just don't know this stuff is happening.
Yeah.
And the fact that he didn't know in his own country that something like this was going on. Back then, it probably got, well, once again, I wasn't alive back then, but I can assume it probably had a little bit more notoriety. And there wasn't as many news things going on. So you would think that it would get more percentage of the news than, say, if it was happening today type of thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're in this niche thing where we would hear about it, but even today, how many people don't hear about this kind of stuff? And back then, obviously, he wasn't, which goes to how good Cousteau was, not only at what he was doing, but the marketing aspect of the whole thing too, whether intentional or not. His name was synonymous. It was the go-to, or if everybody wanted to be part of that. And probably regardless if the U.S. had something going or not, people would probably have still gone to Cousteau first, just because he was the master of this.
Yeah. I mean, it's still that way. With all the contributions that these people we've looked into doing this stuff have had to it, your first name to still roll off your tongue for anything underwater is Cousteau. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once again, design elements too. Aspect of the thing is that they were just such weird designs. And you look at all the other designs; they're all cylinder, either vertical or horizontal, look like Tektite and stuff along those lines. But they are all very simple, standard designs. Whereas Cousteau's throwing these crazy starfish-shaped buildings out there and stuff along those lines. So once again, it's a marketing aspect of the whole thing too. That like I said, whether it's intentional or not, it worked. And his partnerships with like PBS and National Geographic and whomever helped as well. So it was a networking thing on top of that. It wasn't that they were just doing it, but he was making those networking connections with the people that need to be. And I think that also helped. Obviously, that see his grandson doing the same thing. He's networking with all these to raise funding and raise awareness and stuff on those lines too. So, it makes a lot of sense, and it's obviously worked.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. We can get back into your Sealab here.
Yeah, that the take from Sealab I was great. The Navy really liked it, so they said, "Okay, cool. I see what you guys are doing. It worked good. Let's give you more money." So Sealab II. So they're all right. So working again off of that same experimentation that George Bond had done and his team, they got the team together and had the budget now to actually construct a laboratory, a habitat. And so they did. And this time the habitat, it was bigger. It was 50 foot by 12 foot. So 50 foot long, 12 foot wide. As for the people, instead of just a 4-person crew, the Navy liked it so well, like all kinds of people are like, hey, I want to do that. They ended up uh, filtering through people, pulling out 3 crews, so 3 teams of 10 people, so 30 people in all to do rotations, 15-day rotations. So team 1 would do 15-day, team 2 would do 15-day, team 3 would do a 15-day. They sank Sealab II on August 28, 1965. And if you think, I mean, from 64 to 65, that was, they put all that together in a year. Uh, and I'm not trying to poke fun at them, but they didn't have today's technology where things just seem to get done faster or can get done faster. Uh, so that's impressive. You know, they had someone there to put all that together and do all that. So they obviously had a much better budget because in the end, you know, money makes that stuff happen. It really does. Um, so 50 foot by 12 foot, so it's bigger. Um, Heat, they had it heated. There were amenities, more like tech type amenities. You know, it a lot more comfortable in there. I can't remember, one of them had a birthday when they were down there, and because of the mixed gas atmosphere, the cake wouldn't stay together, and he's trying to light a match, and it won't light. There's not enough oxygen in the air to light a match, and it's because it's the helium saturated in it.
That's funny.
And
Yeah.
so that one was 205 feet deep, 62 meters. So
Wow.
deeper. Again, they did all that pre-training, and now you're not just running 4 people through that; you're running 30 people through that. They had a transfer. Uh, uh, I wrote it down somewhere, but don't got it right in front of me, so I'm not going to look. Personnel transfer carrier or something like that. Basically, it's just like what saturation divers use today. So you know they sit in a hyperbarics chamber on a ship today, and then they're dropped down in this thing that's attached to, and it holds their atmosphere. So once they're down to depth, they've been at that depth all along, or something close to it. Um, and that's what these guys were in. It was a hyperbarics chamber. It was a made hyperbarics chamber, and it would actually help them decompress, either compress or decompress, while they were being brought up or down. But it was a transfer, as a personnel transfer carrier, right? Something like that. Basically, a bathysphere that they could raise up and down and control the hyperbarics in. So you got these guys, you know, they're all, that's a lot of people to move through this. So it was a decent sized thing because they held, you know, equipment in that and everything. So 205 feet, that's pretty deep. Scott Carpenter got a play in this one. So he was part of the cruise. And one of the famous things about Sealab II with Scott Carpenter is that he got to be on the phone, the telephone, and it was videoed with his helium voice, the little chipmunk voice, on with the President of the United States.
God, I wonder if anybody understands this.
Well, I don't know. The operator said that she knew what I was trying to tell her, but apparently she didn't.
What you don't see, as which is in the book, and it's hilarious, when they were trying to get through to the president, the switchboard operator at the White House thought they were pulling some kind of prank or something because of the he was trying to, they couldn't understand first, and then the chipmunk voice and stuff, and they couldn't get through to the president. They thought they didn't realize that this was like a thing that was supposed to be done, and they weren't putting the call through. So here's the president, you know, yeah. it finally did go through because Captain Bond had to get on the phone and, I guess go around, circumvent, and so they did end up getting on the phone together. And so the president and the astronaut Scott Carpenter, which then Aquanaut Scott Carpenter, talked on the phone. There's videos it on YouTube and these other videos also. But some of the notable things about Sealab II is the scorpion fish. So, like Tektite, they had this caged area around the bottom that kept the big critters out. Well, scorpion fish found they liked laying underneath the habitat in that caged area because they were protected, and it was a nice place, dark place for them to sit. And so it became a danger to the aquanauts as they're coming and going. They had to get rid of all the scorpion fish all the time to get them out of their way so they didn't get stung. Scott Carpenter is one of the people who got stung by one. And of course, part of every crew, they're going to have some kind of medical personnel down there with them. So the medical personnel, they had stuff stocked in the Sealab ready for such an event. But yeah, that's something you don't just see. Is that they thought about all the big sharks or thinking they were thinking of sharks or whatever. The real danger was the little things that they were letting in, which was funny. So I told you 15 days, so they would stay for 15 days, and then the next crew, it was just a crew transfer. This time they were testing gear, so not just the mixed gases, because they proved the mixed gases were working in the first one. Let's go deeper. Let's keep doing mixed gases. Let's change them and see what's going on. I just drew a blank. That's okay. They're doing salvage techniques. They lowered machinery down there for the guys to work on. For their Navy, because these are Navy divers. They're not going to just have them let there be a playground. They want to prove something. So they lowered stuff down there for them to work on, just mock up stuff to work on. They were testing out electric heated suits to wear in the water because they knew it was cold, especially working with helium. So if you don't know, breathing helium will bleed the heat away from your body. It will take the heat away from your body. And so it's hard to stay warm that way. So even, in a real humid environment where you think you are going to be warm, they're not warm. They're running AC to pull the humidity out of the air, but they're having to run heaters because these guys are so cold from breathing all this helium. So, it was a live and learn experience for them. And so they'd already learned a lot of that from the first one. And so that's why they put heat and everything in the second one. And it really made a difference. They're living a lot more comfortable. The other thing about Sealab II is the place they chose to put it and decided not to move it. It was tilted. So here it is sitting at an angle, right? It's sitting on a hillside. And they called it the Tilton Hilton because of that. So it was tilting slightly, and it was the Tilton Hilton, so they could, if you set something on the table, it would roll off to the lower gravity end. So with all that, you still have these guys that wanted to do it.
How'd that affect the moon pool access?
Well, as long as it's not a great, a big, drastic angle, it's not going to affect it really. I'm sure it said somewhere, but the degrees of how far off it was, I don't remember if it was said or not. It couldn't have been much, just for one of those aspects.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, that's
what I was thinking. It couldn't have been too much because they would have had some serious issues then.
But at the same time, they also they had hatches on theirs, So not like Jules where you can just come and go. They had hatches on
Mm,
theirs,
mm-hmm. That's right.
which I'll get to later here, and about that. But one of the things also that stands out for Sealab too, and I'm not bringing today's politics into this, or politics or feelings, whatever you want to call it. The reason I say it is because of Tuffy. So a porpoise named Tuffy. Okay, there was Tuffy, and there was also a sea lion that I just learned about. I didn't know about the sea lion until a week or so ago, and I was like, well, I didn't see or hear anything about the sea lion, but they were training the porpoise Tuffy and this sea lion. I can't remember his name, to assist the divers. So just like you're teaching a dog to fetch, um, that's what they did. They were teaching Tuffy to help a diver in distress. Uh, Usually, it was to bring that diver back to the habitat, or say if it wasn't that, then it was to take something from the diver to the habitat, or from the habitat to a specific diver. And I don't. 15 days, 3 crews, that doesn't give you a lot of time to do stuff like that. So I don't know how much of that was worked with outside of that environment, but it's still, that's fun. Um, I don't know, training methods. That's why I don't want to get into it as far as politics in today's world. And everyone's going to feel differently about the use of an animal like that.
Yeah.
But it's still neat in its own thing. It's it brings back the old memories of Flipper or whatever, and
Right.
that was one of the things though they were testing. That was part of their testing, was with these animals to interact to help.
It's probably around the same time they're testing putting dolphins putting like sensors on boats and stuff along those lines too,
Yep.
for espionage or for guidance, or torpedo guidance or whatever like that.
Yep.
So I mean, dolphins. It's not the first time they've used dolphins. At least it was a little more humane this time around for the purpose that they're using them for.
That's why I said I didn't want to exactly. As I know some people are going to think of that right off, and it's like this at least was what they're doing
absolutely.
with him. This, if he wasn't, I don't know how he was kept environmentally or whatever, but he was in the open sea. He probably could have left anytime he wanted. So
Sure.
he was probably having fun. That's the idea of it anyway. Either way, that was part of the testing for Sealab II. So you're thinking 1965. So to me, to have basically a heated wetsuit or dry suit, then that's fascinating. That is really cool. Electric heated in the ocean. Okay, I mean, that's pretty cool.
So did you look at any? Was there like an umbilical that went back to the habitat for the power, or did they have a pack on them? Do you know anything about it?
If I remember right, there was both used. They had it set up for both.
Okay.
Like if you're in close, you can just umbilical it, or I guess it'd be better to say hookah. Now that I think about it, because it's more like a hookah rig than an umbilical, but it's still the way I understood it. It would work as umbilical. My understanding for the electric suit was battery power. So,
okay.
I'm speechless right now because I'm thinking of the weight of the batteries it would take to do that in the 60s. Okay, yeah.
Right, especially in the 60s, yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't need a weight belt at least.
Yeah, exactly. You mean got 300-pound of weight on?
Yeah.
So that was really neat, but I forgot to mention where it was at. So it's La Jolla Canyon off of Scripps Institute there in California is where Sealab II was at. That's where they put it. So they picked a different place for each one of the 3 Sealabs. And so La Jolla was where they put Sealab II.
Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, I think the interesting thing about the the decompression in the saturation aspect is you look at like what they do at Aquarius. I know they probably don't do it all the time, but they have to pressurize the whole entire thing or to whatever they're doing and use the whole entire habitat as that pressure vessel to when they're in a mission to decompress everybody versus what they did there, which is, a smarter idea. Obviously takes a little bit more ingenuity and stuff like that. I'm not saying that they couldn't do it with Aquarius, but has been no purpose to do it for Aquarius at this point in time. But I like that idea of having a completely separate vessel to bring the people up and down to compress, to saturate or decompress.
Yeah, I do too. Just because, I mean, I'm sure the Navy looked at it this way since they're running 3 crews. You know, you drop one crew down,
Right.
They get out, the other crew gets in, and you're using the same vehicle for both crews. You're not waiting to open up the habitat for the next crew. You don't have. There's not that wait period. It's a quick transition.
So what about Sealab 3 then?
Oh, it is interesting. And the reason I say it that way is because they did sink it. And they sank it to a depth of 610 feet. They were really going down there. This time it was going to be five different teams for 12 days apiece. So after Sealab 2, everyone, imagine being, the person back then, you love this kind of thing, and you see a film clip or whatever of Tuffy the Dolphin, and, one of your fellow divers, out there, and of course you want to do it. So now they're filtering through even more people to stay again. The problem is they ran into nothing but trouble with that one, and some people really, really think and just theorize with the things that happened that it was sabotage. Some reason someone was sabotaging the thing because it never really took off. They got it sank, but this is where Barry Cannon, the Aquanaut Barry Cannon, died. Bob Barth was with him. So they were trying to get the hatch open. So there was we talked about the hatch on the moon pool earlier, and that's why I told you to come back to it, because there was some pressure issues. Something was wrong, and they couldn't get the pressure to equalize inside the habitat. So they sent the guys over with some pry bars to see if they could get it to equalize just by prying on the hatch some. And they couldn't. Well, now they think from everything they understand something was wrong with Barry Cannon's rebreather mix. So there's these canisters that scrub out the carbon dioxide in the air we exhale. All right. And when you're going that deep, and it's a rebreather system that they were using, and that's why. And that's what it was doing. So something was wrong. And, the book will tell you everything and how it happened way better than I ever will. But that was like the tragedy. So it started out with hiccup after hiccup, and then that happened. And they just couldn't get things to go in the right direction. And so they pulled the plug on it. And they never went back to it. The world changed. You had people walking on the moon, so the world changed.
Right.
They were going to keep testing the atmosphere stuff. That's really what they were after. I mean, that's my understanding of everything they've said. And ingenuity. I don't know how to say it, but that's, with each Sealab, they were coming up with better and better ideas, equipment, things to do. And they were just going to put more of it to the test with the third one. And they didn't. So it was off of San Clemente Island, California, is where they put it. And I've never been to the West Coast waters. I've always wanted to, because I want to be in a kelp forest. That is one of my little bucket lists for scuba diving. I think that would be just one of the coolest things of cool. And so um, to go there to do that, but the reason I always think of it is everything I understand about it, the water's a lot cooler. It's not like where I can go over here to, you know, Outer Banks or whatever, North Carolina, Florida, and to jump in the water and it'd be great. It's a lot cooler, as I understand it. You usually have to wear some kind of thermal protection, and so I always think of that when I was reading these about the Sealab and how everything was on the West Coast. That water's a lot cooler, so they're going to need good thermal protection, especially going that deep. So I always think of that when I have gone through these things, and that's why I think that I keep coming back to that electric wetsuit. It just fascinates me that they were trying that, because just the idea of those waters being so much cooler, I could see why they were trying that. But the Sealab 3, they had guards posted on the ships above it, the support vessels, because they kept finding things wrong, things that according to the checklist were done right, and they would come back to it the next morning and it wasn't right. So what's going on? So they started placing guards on everything. That's how suspicious the Navy and everyone was about having sabotage. And of course, after Barry Cannon died, they pulled the plug. There was all kinds of investigation for it, and so it never went anywhere from there, which is sad, because it was Sealab II refurbished, made better.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's why I thought that it was exact same habitat. They just refurbished it, and was that part of the aspect too, that they hadn't built a new one? They were just refurbishing one they'd already used before. Was that potentially part of the problem as well?
Well, I never caught that in the book anywhere. I didn't feel like that was alluded to, that was a problem.
Yeah.
Because I'll say, obviously, if they used the same habitat, then they were confident it could take the deeper pressure.
Sure. And this all happened in '69, I think it was.
Oh, yeah.
So, like you said, it was right.
Yep.
It was like right during the whole space race, was right at its pinnacle. I mean, everything was going on. So anything, even if they had discovered who knows what down there, it would have been overshadowed by Man on the Moon.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a series of unfortunate events, all at the perfect timing, unfortunate timing, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. It's a really anticlimactic ending for a video like this.
Yeah.
I mean, it honestly is, because you get all that potential, and you just think that's the way they felt about it too. That whole program, I'm sure Mr. Bond and them just felt like, we're steamrolling this thing now, and then bam, all that just happens, and just pulls the rug right out from underneath it.
So did they have any? I mean, I don't know if the book said, or they went into speculation on who would have been the saboteur, if there was one, or who had wanted the thing to be sabotaged.
The book didn't touch on the sabotage aspect as much as an old article I'd ran across did. Yeah. So it doesn't say, because I know I would have put that, but this is Cold War era, also. So I'm sure there's all kinds of ideas going around. But one of the things I didn't mention earlier was while they were in their decompression chambers, the divers were, that was one of the things I had to put a guard on, was someone kept shutting off the oxygen supply to the chambers, to the decompression chambers, to the divers.
Wow.
Yeah. So they scrapped it. They scrapped the whole. When I say they scrapped, I mean they scrapped the lab. They scrapped the habitat. It got pulled up and cut up and scrapped. But they never. Maybe they did find out, but I didn't hear or read anything that caught my attention as to why they had so many problems with it equalizing, because the first time it was built, when they first sunk it, so as Sealab II, they were having problems with it leaking because of helium. Helium leaks out of places easier than air does. I'll leave it at that in case you're not scientific minded. So just because it's airtight doesn't mean it's helium tight. So they were having problems with that, and they had to fix a few things on the first Sealab II, I guess, not for first Sealab, but Sealab II. And I just often wonder if those fixes at the deeper depth caused them some kind of problem. Because everything's being compressed.
So after, yeah. So after they scrapped all this, I mean, were they just done, or were they ever talking about continuing on? Maybe not under the Sealab banner, or is this the whole Sealab program was just done at that point in time? There's no future for it whatsoever.
There had been talk, but nothing ever took ground. The Cold War, and 69. You're talking, Vietnam was ending. Is that right? I want to say it was ending. Wow, that's my timeline, probably. But Vietnam had been going on. There was plenty of distractions.
So when we're talking, now that you've done all this research on it, what if you could boil down to three major points of either the design or the purpose of Sealab that really speak to you, that were the coolest parts, or the parts that you appreciate the most of the habitat or the program? What would you say those are?
I guess the most surprising thing to me, maybe not the way, but I'll say this anyway, the depth, right? Because just like we were talking about before, Cousteau, he knew how to use that media, and it was cool. So the depth, Cousteau's, 2 atmospheres, 1 atmosphere water. These are a lot more than that. And so you imagine, that's what they were planning for. That's what they were living at, those depths. I mean, even though 3 didn't happen, 610 feet, that's way down there. That is just unbelievable.
And for what purpose? I mean, when would that ever come into? I mean, that makes me question, and why you would even train for that depth for a semi-permanent habitat. I can see 1, 2, maybe even 3 atmosphere, but you go much deeper. We've talked about this multiple times. It's what is it to do down there? Unless it is for mining or oil rigs or something along those lines, but that's not what they're doing. This is military. So what's the military up to?
Well, this is my bad. I'd have to go back to the book and look again. I can't remember if it was this book or another book. But using that information, they had dropped some divers down to hook some spy gear up to some Russian cables that were underwater. And those divers every so many days would have to go retrieve, because we're talking old cassette style, reel, not cassette but reel type recorders. Okay, so they had to go retrieve this recorder, put a new one in place every so many days or weeks or whatever, and so they had the submarine sitting out there with these divers in it, just staged, just ready to do that, and that's what they did with it.
Funny.
And it was deep. It was really deep.
I knew it couldn't be just purely for scientific reasons.
Oh no, it's Navy. Come on. Because at the same time, I wonder how much so the Scott Carpenter president phone call, that thing, that's all media. But what it doesn't say is how much of this was in the media to start with. because the Navy, well, let's face it, it's military. And just like now, there's plenty of things we don't know that they're doing because they're experimenting, they're figuring it out. And later on, when it becomes more mainstream or something that can be popular and work in our favor, then we find out, or media, would find out about it.
So we're so now you've done several of these. How does Sealab differ from, besides the depth? We already addressed the depth as a big one. How's it differ from like the con-shelf programs or the tech type program? What was and the espionage aspect of the whole thing? what differences do you see in this program versus the other two?
The experimentation. So I'm going back to George Bond. That's probably one of the biggest things I see is the fact that now tech type, I just didn't see as much in the stuff I read. It might be there, but with George Bond being in Sealab, heading that up, and all the experiments he did to prove these gases, to prove the stuff that was going on, to be able to breathe and to stay without adverse effect to the human body, and that was the idea of it. Where Jacques Cousteau, they were just showing it could be done for their depths that they used, but I don't. It's a playground versus a work area. I don't know how to say it. Gotcha. It's not that it was any less important.
That's a good way of putting it.
It wasn't any less important. But it was a playground for Jacques Cousteau versus a work area, a whole lot deeper. And that's why I think a lot of that had to do with the design differences also. Because the only thing that, Jacques Cousteau's Conchel 3, the big bathysphere looking thing, the big sphere, but I would be really interested in seeing some kind of structural studies to see if the starfish conch shell would hold up to that kind of pressure. Just from the looks of it, I don't think it would have. Yeah. No. But yeah, that's the biggest contrast I see is for it.
Yeah, that's fair. So wrapping up here, was there anything else that you learned or you want to address about the Sealab programs that has not already been said, or you think that needs to be said?
Only that if you're interested, actually, even if you're not interested, it's a great read. That book. Do you want me to show it, or you put a link in here for it? I'll
throw a link in there. I'll throw it. Yeah.
Okay.
It should be appearing up on the screen right now too. So we'll.
Okay. So it's a good, especially history. It don't matter what your interest is. There's plenty of interests that would all link to this book, and I can't say it enough. I wish I had read it years ago, and that's on me. I would see it and think, I'll get around to it, or whatever, and I just couldn't believe how much I really liked it. I'm probably gonna find myself reading it again, or getting an audiobook and listening to it when I drive or something, just to hear more of it again.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, with that being said, thank you for doing this research, even though it wasn't really research for you. It was enjoyable reading, but nonetheless, thank you for taking the time, to prepare this for everybody. And once again, so what do you think you're going to do next? Are you going to do another underwater habitat? And if so, which one's next on your plan here?
I've been so caught up, I hadn't thought about it, but honestly, my next one is we put in our schedule to do ROVs. And I've touched on a little bit of research, and once again, I'm overwhelmed by it because it's amazing. Oh, and here I am. We might have to redo this, but going back to Tuffy, they used an ROV also to assist the divers in Sealab II. They used an ROV, which I never knew that until the book. I was like, I'll be darned. So yeah, they
Interesting.
they built an ROV just for helping the divers and stuff for Sealab too.
Very
Yeah.
cool. All right then. Well, again, thank you. We'll run through our normal little close since Adam's not here to do the outro, but I'll take care of it this time for him since he's not here. As always, all of our information is at AtlantaSeaColony.com. All of our social media links, all of our designs, our drawings, our bios, which Babe is on there as well. It's because he is a valued member of the team. And I say that it sounds kind of sarcastic. But I'm not being sarcastic. I honestly do mean that. Obviously, he wouldn't be here speaking with us right now. But no, all of our information is on there. Go check us out there. You can follow us whatever you prefer, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, or Discord. Jump on our Discord. We have lots of really good conversations there, either privately or in the group type of thing. You can shoot me a message on there. I'll get to you as soon as I can. My schedule is getting pushed out farther and farther. So some of the people have been messaging me. It's been taking a little bit longer to get back with them, but there's always that, which tons of great resources in there. There's people who talk your ear off in there. I won't mention any names, but you'll find out who they are once you get in there and start posting stuff in there because they will talk to you about a bunch of stuff, which is good. Also, on our website, we have a merch store, which I'm rocking an old shirt that's very faded. Babe's got one of his on. Yes, we different merch that's on there. We're still working. I'm still trying to figure out the new merch store. For some reason, shipping's jacked up, but I'm still working on it. But yes, we got all those different ways that you can, help us out, or Patreon, which that really I see Patreon is if you honestly see the vision and you're wanting to be a part of something and really follow the progression of what we're trying to do here. That Patreon is the best way of doing it. You get once a month, I'll hop on there. I do a private live video, really giving you some of the stuff that everybody else doesn't really know about. If there's anything new coming up, you guys can find out about it first. The new merch store is going to be VIP to them only for quite a while. So it's different clothes, better. I don't know if it's better clothes. The hoodie I got from them, I really enjoyed, even though I've lost it already. I don't know where it's at. But yeah, so Patreon. $5, $15, or $25 a month. Really, it's not that much, especially at the $5 a month. I mean, that's a chicken sandwich, the equivalent of a chicken sandwich right there for once a month. So, yeah. So I would definitely encourage you guys to take a look at that. I've actually shot a new video talking about our Patreon that I'm getting ready to put out there. So definitely consider doing that. And to our patrons, we've got Edward Haas, Brian Acosta, Matthew Cathy, Martin Reese, and ours truly, Babe. So we thank you guys. We appreciate you guys. You have definitely helped us come a whole lot farther than we would have done by ourselves. Just in the artwork and stuff that's out there. The engineer, which I have a call this coming Tuesday, I think, with. He wants to talk about some stuff. So all that's going down, and that's all paid for because of people like you. So with that being said, tune in a couple of weeks. We'll have another live stream, and like I said, Babe's going to be working on an ROV one here down the road, and we just hope you have a great rest of your week, whether you're listening to this in the podcast format or in the video format. We appreciate you, and have a great evening, rest of your day, week, whatever. Thank you, Babe.